and welcome to another Daily Muppet. In today's video, I want to talk about Kabi Mayu's future. Obviously, still a big subject of discussion at United and elsewhere. Talk about the midfield plans and where we're looking at it. Talk a little bit about why potentially, the midfield, the wingback position is not necessarily a priority at this point in time, or why it's being stated that that's not a priority at this point in time, and kind of explain, the overall thought process with all of that, and where they're going. And I want to reference as well the original plans that United had laid out in terms of their transfer dealings over the next few windows, and go with that. I also want to address then the center back, which tends to be here another target that they will be looking at in the future in this next summer. Look at a few of the targets and players that they have been watching that they haven't yet signed, or that haven't actually been signed somewhere else. In addition, there will, of course, very likely be some new names, and talk about midfield and all sorts of things there. Covered some of this on the lives, some of this not. But I wanted to get it all into a good kind of summary here as we just get right into things. Okay, so let's start with the midfield targets. I want to talk about this a little bit. Okay, in terms of the midfield, who United are really looking for, why it's likely to be summer, and what it means for the future of the players at the club. There are, of course, 4 midfielders at United right now in terms of the senior midfielders, the regular for the 2, which is, of course, Bruno, Kobbie, Ugarte, and Casemiro, and different situations with each of them. I'll talk about Casemiro in a second, as we had kind of confirmation of that. But it is a bit of with Bruno and Ugarte, 2 that I don't have a separate section for. I think very much Ugarte, his future is really dependent on what happens the rest of the season, but also what happens with everybody else, because it's unlikely that United will be going into summer looking to replace 4 midfielders. They're on the hunt for 2. So that speaks to the idea that they're going to want to keep 2 of these midfielders. That doesn't mean in the long term they may not be replaced, but it is a question of who is likely to stay. At the moment, if you were to ask me, I would suggest that Bruno and Ugarte are the 2 most likely to stay. Bruno, because he has that option. He could end up even staying on a lower contract and extending years. That wouldn't block other players coming in. Ugarte, because he provides as a utility, forget the price for a minute, provides something as a utility player if he's happy and fine staying at the club and not being a starter. Different to the situations of Casemiro and Kobbie that we'll touch on in a moment. But that's just an assumption at this point in time based on a little bit of information, and a lot can change over the course of the season. So who are they looking at for these 2 midfielders? Well, the 2 primary targets that are rising to the top at the moment are, of course, Elliot Anderson and Adam Wharton. We know that Adam Wharton, Baleba, and Anderson are the main names. We've heard a lot about Elliot Anderson recently. A lot of stories, a lot of pieces, a lot of talk about him, some good confirmations from some very good journalists and reporters as well of United's interest in Elliot Anderson. If you look at it in general, what I can tell you is that United would like to prioritize somebody from the Premier League. This is one of the reasons why it's going to be difficult to get somebody in January, is because the targets that they have in mind, and the ones they're looking at mostly in terms of Anderson, Baleba, Wharton, with Baleba there being concerns presently over form and things like that, are going to be near impossible to get out of their clubs. Now, they're going to look to them. They're going to try to sign them. They've already had little inquiries and things like that, but there will also be a lot of competition. So they're very good players. They fit a lot of what United want to do, but it's more likely for them to be obtainable in summer. And of course, at the same time, that also means United will have a better case, ideally, at that time to say, look, we're back into Europe. We're going. Come on down to Manchester. Don't join, Liverpool or Chelsea or Newcastle or somebody else. We want you in Manchester. And they'll have a better case to present in that regards to these players. So that's the view as of now, is that we have a better time dealing with competition if we have a decent season and can show the direction of the project even more. but as well that it's going to be very difficult to obtain any of these guys in January. And one of the things they don't want to do is panic and sign players that they really aren't going to be the long-term plans in January. They don't want to just panic and say, we need somebody, let's just get somebody. And maybe they don't fit, maybe they're not what they want, maybe they're not the ideal player, but they really need someone in January. They have a willingness to spend. They've been exploring these deals, but obviously not going so well in terms of the viability of getting them done. Anderson and Wharton, two of the top targets for this. For here, we know how good they are. Other players that they have been watching and have considered, João Gomez at Wolves. Of course, if Wolves end up getting relegated, João Gomez is one I would really, really think United could look to if they're looking to two midfielders as an option for the number 6. You put him in that role. He can also play in the number 8 role. Quite flexible in that respect, a really quality Premier League player. Could be perfect to partner with someone like Anderson, to partner with someone like Bruno, to partner with anybody really, and to play in a lot of different types of roles, to partner with Kobbie. There's many, many things that he can do that I think would be successful in that respect. So João Gomez is one that they've kept an eye on. The other player that I've mentioned a few times that I've still been told to keep an eye on is, of course, Morten Hjulmand at Sporting. He is probably the most similar we can get to Casemiro in terms of how he plays at the moment, and has been for some time. They have a lot more possession, so his ball winning isn't, in terms of volume, isn't as high, but he's a top dueler. He's very good on the ball, very disciplined, very intelligent in his way of reading the game. Obviously, 26 years old. He not too old, not too young, should be able to come in and put in work right away. They did consider him last summer as a potential midfielder alternative. Did not end up making a move. I think the expense was looked at as too high for the quality. So that will still, of course, be dependent on there. But those are a few other names that I'm looking at in addition to Stiller and Buwadi, who we know are younger players that, maybe there's some more questions on. And again, I would suggest will be more likely players that they would look to after sorting out the futures of some of these other players. But Anderson, Wharton, Hjulmand, João Gomez, all players I would continue to consider at this point in time. So let's take a look at and talk then about Casemiro. I said in a video last week or earlier this week, maybe it was on a live, maybe it's the end of last week, that as of yet, there are no talks for Casemiro to stay. And I would say he is still the most likely and most positioned to leave United of the 4 midfielders there presently. Contract is expiring. Value is extremely high. What does he want to do in the future? It's an unknown. There are no talks over extending his contract. There are no discussions about it. There's been no approaches about it. It's something they'll consider at the end of the season. I think that the way that this is going to go, based on I hear it, is how the season goes. They're going to look to their targets, and if they feel they can get the right guys, they'll make their decisions to just move on and let Casemiro go as expected and as planned. Barring him signing an extremely big wage cut to stay a few years, his experience and the ability for them to move on someone like Ugarte without losing money, it's more likely that Casemiro will depart at the end of the season, at least as it stands presently. No talks over a new contract, no contact in that respect, and at the moment, no indication of a plan to do something further on that front right now. Then there's Kabi Mayu, and it's been a big debate about this. Now, I want to share a couple things from the perspective of understanding that I have from the club side, and then we can look at some of the information and news and stories and things like that. Number one, the club want to keep Kobbie. They want him to stay. They would like him to be there in the future. They would like him to be in that role behind Bruno where he could take over from him, where when Bruno leaves, you have 2 players for that position, Kobbie, whoever they might sign, and that will be something for the long term that could be one of the key players for the long term. They would also like Kobbie to sign a new contract. From his side of it, obviously, you have a bit of this issue or this debate at the moment where he is looking at it and saying, I want to go play. I would like to go play football more. I'd like to go play the season, especially for the World Cup, because there's not enough games right now and all of that. And the club kind of looking at this, and I share the view and saying, I don't like it. I think that personally, I understand how people are going to feel about this. I think that that is not the sign at 20 years old of what you necessarily want out of a player in terms of commitment to the team. Yes, there are fewer games. So you have to earn your right. You have to earn your chance. And that will be the same for anybody at any point in time at this club. At 20, when there is a future for you, when there's an obvious path into the team, when next year there will be a lot more games, be patient and wait. And it's still early in the season, and there'll be a lot more games to play. But you look at it from United's perspective, and the thinking is, well, if Kobbie were to leave on loan, either we have to figure out how we get somebody as good or better, in which case, what is there for Kobbie to come back to? Or we have to get somebody worse. It seems like a bit of a lose-lose in this situation. We want to keep Kabi Mayu. We want him to be here. So if he's going to go, well, might end up being permanent in that respect, because we're going to have to be able to sign somebody as good or better. Otherwise, the team, when it may need him most, think about it. If we have an injury, something like that happens, and he ends up needing to be starting every single game, it can happen. It can happen. It could be an injury in the 10 that moves Bruno up. It could be an injury in the midfield that pushes Kobbie in. Lots and lots of things can happen aside from the fact that the schedule is going to get busier and more intense, and we're going to need everybody to contribute. That could change these circumstances. Why worsen the team when we're trying to build the team back up? I don't like it. I've said that before. I don't think it's right. I don't think it's correct. I think it's a really, really odd thing. Like it's like you have a relationship with someone and they're like, well, you're down in the dumps right now and I'm not getting what I need out of you, so I'm going to go with someone else for a few months and I'll be back. Once you're successful again and you can give me my minutes. That's not going to work out how you think it is. Going on loan is not going to earn you a place in the team in the future. If anything, it is going to mean the club are going to look to your replacement. So I don't think that plan makes any sense. I don't think the club are keen on it at all. And I think that to a degree, it sheds a bit of a bad light when they're talking so much in interviews. Wilcox talked about this. Amram's talked about this, about commitment to the team and the club and all of that. And I understand there's complications with this. I understand it's a World Cup year. And I know that not everybody's going to agree with what I'm saying on this, but it's just the way that I see it. It's not something that I can get on board with. The story from Fabrizio that said, would still be open for a straight loan deal in January, but it depends on United. West Ham are offering a guaranteed starting spot, while Napoli are looking for a midfielder, and Mainoo has been on their shortlist. So I don't think this is going to happen. I don't think anything's going to go on here, but honestly, I think at the same time, it's much more likely that Kobbie will be sold because they will start to feel that he doesn't want to earn his place at United and he isn't committed to it. More likely than he's loaned. I think it'd be more likely he'd be sold than loaned in that case. And I understand that it's probably going to make some people angry saying that, and I'm not trying to my personal opinion, I want Kobbie to stay. I want him to play. I think he's a great talent, and I think he could be the future in that midfield. I also think it is ridiculous, the impatience on this front, and I don't think that it's okay for a player to leave when the club, just because there's not enough games at the moment, when the club actually need everybody to contribute. Whatever the limited contributions you have in training, on the pitch, doesn't matter. Everybody is needed, and everybody is a part of pushing this team forward, and everybody should see it that way. So it doesn't really make me very happy, the situation at all, but we shall see where it lands. Either way, at the moment, very unlikely that United are going to sanction this. I would be more shocked if they did that than if they just outright sold him. But they would only do it either way if they had a better replacement in mind in that position, and I think it would spell the end for Kobbie if that was to be the case. So I worry that if Bruno stays, which is a distinct possibility, he could even sign a lower contract and extend a little bit longer, that Kobbie will feel he has to leave. when there still should be a lot of games and a future for him there. I do worry about that. Again, the club would rather keep him and have him sign a new deal. That's how it's been, at least. So we'll see how this develops. And I think after the next international break, when the schedule gets a lot busier, hopefully a lot of players are playing, a lot more minutes for everyone, and it puts to bed some of the concerns over this, and we see a more united front from everyone involved. On the center backs, this is the next priority, and I want to harken back to a video I made a while ago, a very amusing PowerPoint image here. Let's take a look. This is the big picture. Oops, go backwards, okay? Now, this was around when we were signing Mbeumo. I made it before we signed him, and then after we signed him, I made the check marks and moved the colored in. But look, this is a really dumb image, but it's also really simple, and I did that for a reason in making it very simple. And the reason was this. I wanted it to be really self-explanatory what United's overall big picture plan was in terms of recruitment. When they came in, they laid out like the next 10 signings, and they've been systematically and methodically moving through them. So when you hear that, well, it's two midfielders and a center back wanted, this has been the plan for a long time, and a wing back is not prioritized. And I want to explain the way they're going about it and thinking. When we finished with Mbeumo, the next thing was striker. I said that, I called that. That's what we ended up doing. We actually agreed a fee for Gyökeres. I'm just going to go on about that a little bit because I got a lot of heat for it in summer when it was true. We did agree a fee for Gyökeres per his agent, but he turned us down. Fine. Looks like it worked out really well, and we pivoted to a better target. Same goes for Liam Delap. And ended up getting Šeško. So we finished the striker. We jumped ahead. We got ourselves our goalkeeper in Lamens. We tried for a midfielder. Didn't get it done. So if you look at the three remaining points on this plan, you have Ederson. Ederson was just an example. Some of the pictures were. But we wanted an 8 and a 6, essentially. That's what we were looking for. Get an 8, get a 6, get a center back of some sort. Those were the three things in the plan. Those are the three things that continue to be the plan. 2 midfielders and a center back. Now, once this plan is completed, once the overall plan is completed and United have their 2 midfielders and their center backs, then they will look to revisit the other parts of the club. They'll have had more time to observe the players, to look at the youth ranks, to see players moving up, to see if players can step up, to see if players have more time. Dorgu, end of season, it'll be a year and a half he's been here, not 7 months or something like that. We'll be able to cast more judgment on the rest of the pitch, but they will feel we got our striker, we got the 2 10s, we got, at that time, we'll have a center back, another center back, another center back. Good, we play a 3 center back system. A goalkeeper. Let's see, what else have we bought? 2 midfielders. Boom. So we've mostly filled out the team. The last positions that they will look at are going to be then saying, all right, we've moved players around for those fullbacks and wingback positions. We've bought a wingback already in Dorgu. So we'll take a look back. Are there any positions that are underperforming where we don't feel like we have the players that can step up, improve, or grow? Like we have this problem at midfield now where they're either aging or we just don't have the options. So they're going to want to observe. There's players at the youth ranks, and Patrick Dorgu is a player they still 100% have not given up on as of yet. So once they finish plan A, then they'll revisit everything else, take a look at it, and see what they think and what may be next. That's the idea. That's what they're going to do, and that's the plan. So it's sticking to, as Wilcox talked about earlier in the week, and I recommend watching that or reading whatever you can about his whole interview, about having a real plan, about having a real structure of things, about having a direct route and way that they've been going through systematically to repair the team and not reacting too heavily. What they don't want to do is say, oh, X player isn't performing today, we're going to abandon our plans and go do it. Remember, I've always said they've had this big overall plan. It doesn't have to always be in order. It's can they get the players that they want at that point in time. This last summer, they said, fine, we feel we can get our forwards. That's what we're going to do. Fine. moving forward, they will feel we've got our targets for the midfield. They're already lined up. We just discussed them. Then there's center backs, and then we'll look at what else we need to do to help solve this problem. And we'll know more about our budget then as well, based on what happens with Casemiro and Bruno and Kobbie, but also what happens with the signings that we bring in. What do they cost? Where do we finish in the league? How far can our budget stretch? Can we get to the next phase of our plan, which is looking and solving certain problems? So I wanted to look at then as well some of the center backs. So I went back to look at some of the names that I know United were still looking at when they were in the market for a center back, because they've had eyes on it for some time, including before and leading up to the summer. We had some names listed. A lot of them have moved. A lot of them have gone. A lot of them are probably not an option anymore, like Gerard Braithwaite, who they very strongly considered signing again. What's left from the original lists of players they're looking at are Guehi and Inacio. Now, stats-wise, it doesn't really matter. Most of you who watch the Premier League know Guehi is a very, very good player. Obviously, nearly moved to Liverpool. Still very likely to move to Liverpool, but certainly one that is on United's list, on their radar, and perhaps they could make a play for him, considering he will be free, technically. Could it be this is the January signing, get a jump on everybody else? You know, could it be that they shift to something like trying to buy him and get him for cheaper in January, get a deal done there? And maybe it's possible. It's certainly not outside the realm of conversation, even though obviously I would still say it's more likely ends up going to Liverpool. But these are two names. Inacio obviously worked with Amram at Sporting. United have declined to sign him on a few occasions here, but they have been watching him for a while. He is a very, very good passer. Left-footed, pretty much exactly the type of profile that Amram would want at Sporting. But there have been concerns about his ability to transition to this league, and I share those concerns having watched Sporting a lot. There's times I've really wanted him, and there's times I've thought, oof, yeah, I don't know about that. Physically, defensively, I'm not sure he'd be up to the task. So if it's not one of those two names, if it's not Guehi in January, then I'm on the hunt as well, as I've mentioned with the midfield, in looking for alternatives. As mentioned before in one of the videos, something like Conor Gallagher. Well, let's see what else shows up at center back and if we can find more. So I'll be looking into that as I can. But for now, I'm still keeping an eye on that Guehi situation just in case, as I think United at the end of summer took a little second glance at that just in case there was something they could do. So I'm watching for January and beyond. Okay. And the last thing was just the Ronaldo comments. I made a little short about this. I don't think anybody particularly cares or anybody's particularly bothered about the Ronaldo comments, but I did find them a little bit funny. You know, the discussions about the things that were mentioned about, you know, United and not having a structure and things like that. I felt as though, you know, time for him has not changed. Time for him has not changed from when he left United. His feelings about United back then, he hasn't really come back and gone, wait, a lot has changed. He's sort of like, there's this gap and he hasn't really observed or seen what's going on, which isn't particularly surprising. But I did find Amram's responses to it also interesting and saying, look, a lot of this was true. And I think time has, whatever the reasons, I think time has lent itself well to Ronaldo's initial comments. And I still think it's relevant today when you talk about mentality, things like that. You look at the games, a lot of what's going on, win or lose, comes down to mentality right now. United, I think, have the talent and the ability, and we can see that they're starting to get the understanding of the system and of working together and of the coach to perform and to win plenty of games and to beat almost anyone. But will they show up? Can they stay focused? These are the things that Ronaldo also commented about then in terms of the culture and what was wrong. And these are the things that still take time. And these are the things that Ruben Amorim has, and why I believe he responded kind of positively in a way to those comments about the past, is to say, this is what we're working on to move forward, because he's talked a lot about focus and things like that in recent times, about in the last days in the press conferences, about if we're there, if the energy is there, if all of it is there, we can beat anybody. And that's really the biggest question day in and day out, is will that happen? So I think Ronaldo was very right in his original comments about United, and that has shown itself over time. But maybe he hasn't quite seen the difference as of yet. But, you know, he was complimentary of Amorim, at least as compared to what he said about the manager in the past. Only other thing is, in addition, obviously growing plans during AFCON for Shea Lacey to become involved in the first team. In addition, there's quite a lot of work still being done on the youth side of things to look at more players to bring in as they turn 18, players like Leon Orozco, but a lot more being looked at. And that is certainly a pipeline that United want to very much stay on top of and are working very hard on as well. Don't give a lot of specifics on that myself, just something that's definitely happening right now. Okay, that's what I have for today. I'll be back tomorrow with the pre-match, the live, all of that, the normal Friday things before the early Saturday game. So there we are. Thank you for watching today's video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications on. Catch you in the next one.